So in this presentation, we'll be expatiating on ambiguity, vagueness, definitions, using some mentions, consistency and inconsistency, implications, equivalence, necessary truth and necessary falsehood, and contingent truth and contingent falsehood. Thank you very much. Now, ambiguity refers to a word, phrase, or statement which contains more than one meaning. Example, it's ambiguous to say, I rode a black horse in black pajamas, because it may lead us to think the horse is wearing a red pajamas. However, in order to make the statement clear, we use disambiguation. What is disambiguation? Disambiguation simply means rewriting all ambiguous statements and making them clear. Example, I rode a black horse while wearing a red pajamas. Types of ambiguity. Now we have three types of ambiguities. That is the lexical, referential, and syntactic ambiguity. And we expatiate them one by one. Now, lexical ambiguity is a form of ambiguity where a single word or name has more than one meaning in a language. Example, light or fair. Now, referential ambiguity occurs when a word or phrase or pronoun in the context of a particular sentence could refer to two or more properties or things. Example, Kofi slapped Khalifa with his belt. Then he collapsed. It could be either Kofi, Khalifa, or someone else collapsed. Syntactic ambiguity. Syntactic ambiguity is also called structural ambiguity or grammatical ambiguity. Now, it is the presence of two or more possible meanings within a single sentence or sequence of words. Example, I'm glad I'm a man, and so is Lola. This can mean Lola and I are both glad I'm a man, or I'm glad Lola and I are both men. Thank you very much. Vagueness. Now we're about to elaborate on vagueness. One may ask, what is vagueness? Vagueness refers to a lack of clarity in meanings of words or a phrase. One must know that vagueness is different from ambiguity. People tend to mistake these two terms. However, a term can be vague even though it's not ambiguous. In fact, an ambiguous term can have very precise meanings. Vagueness in a statement decreases the amount of information that is being conveyed. It is necessary to avoid vagueness in situations that demand concrete information. Vague expressions often allow for a continuous range of interpretations. For example, words such as love, happiness, peace, rich, poor are all examples of vague words. With vagueness, we can rarely tell with precision whether they apply to a given situation or not. Let's take this example. How rich does someone have to be in order to be called rich? This example cited before is a classic example of vagueness because we cannot tell how much one has to have in order to be called rich. This is what vagueness is about. Thank you. Definitions. Definitions can be termed as a statement that describes a meaning of a word, word group, sign, or symbol. Definitions are intended exclusively to explicate the meaning of words. There are two parts of a definition. We have the definiendum, that is the term being defined, and the definiant, that is the word that defines the definiendum. Now the three types of definitions that we are about to explain are reportive definitions, stipulative definitions, and precising definitions. Reportive definitions. Reportive definitions are also known as lexical definitions. This definition reports the existing meaning of a term. Words are used in more than one way, and therefore have the further purpose of eliminating ambiguity. that would otherwise arise if one of these meanings were to be confused with another. Stipulative definitions. Now, stipulative definition does not look at the meaning of a term, but rather assigns a new meaning to a term. Stipulated definitions do not mind whether the term already has an explanation or not. An example is the word stan, originated from rapper Eminem, meaning a crazy or obsessed fan. Precising definition. A precising definition is the meaning of a term. It makes meaning of a term for a more specific purpose. And the purpose of a precising definition is to reduce the vagueness of a word. That is what definition is about. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to use and mention. Use and mention is a foundational concept of analytic philosophy where it is necessary to make a distinction between using a word or phrase and mentioning it. It's simply confusing the word used to describe a thing with the thing itself. To avoid this error, it is customary to put the word used to describe the thing in quotes. Most commonly used as an equivocation actually. Thank you. Consistency and inconsistency. A set of statements is logically consistent if they can all be true at the same time. A set of statements is logically inconsistent if they cannot all be true at the same time. It may also be helpful to think of logically consistency as a set of beliefs that do not contradict each other, regardless of whether they are true. When evaluating logical consistency, assume the statements are true and think about whether they fit together like the pieces of a puzzle. That is, consistency is about understanding the relationships between your beliefs, not proving a belief true. Example: all men have blonde hair. I am a man, I have brown hair. The answer is these three beliefs are logically inconsistent. If the first two statements are true, the third must be false. If the third is true, the first or second must be false. They cannot all be simultaneously true. Thank you. That's what consistency and inconsistency is all about. Implication and equivalence. Implication is also known as conditional statement. It means that if then, so, if P then Q, this reads P implies Q. Example: P, today is a public holiday. Q, there will be no school. The implication will be if today is a public holiday, then there will be no school. Equivalence is also known as biconditional statement. It is when two statements are linked with if and only if. Example: P, I'll buy an iPhone X. Q, I have $700. The equivalent statement will be I'll buy an iPhone X if and only if I have $700. That is what implication and equivalence is all about in a nutshell. Thank you. Necessary truth and necessary falsehood. Necessary truth. It's a proposition that could not possibly have been false. This can be expressed by saying that a necessary truth is a proposition that is true in every possible world. Example: 3 plus 3 is equal to 6. It is true by virtue of its logical structure. Necessary falsehood. It's a proposition that is false in all possible world. For example, 2 plus 2 is equal to 20. And that's what constitutes necessary truth and necessary falsehood. Thank you. Contingent truth and contingent falsehood. Now, contingent truth is a true proposition that could have been false. Contingent truths are usually truths of experience or of science. For example, some people prefer fish to chicken. Second example, the tree has red leaves. Third example, all liquids boil. Fourth example, all falling objects accelerate. Contingent falsehood. It is a false proposition that could have been true. That is what contingent falsehood and contingent truth are all about. So far in this presentation, we have touched on ambiguity, we have touched on vagueness, definitions, use and mention, consistency and inconsistency, implication, equivalence, necessary truth and necessary falsehood, contingent truth and contingent falsehood. And that's what Group 11 has for you. Thank you very much.